You're sitting in the lobby for a job interview that you've been waiting for your whole life. Suddenly, something doesn't feel right. You stop, you look around. There's 5 or 6 other people there. They're all wearing blazers, looking 10 years older than you, very put together. You're in a tank top and dress pants. Why are you wearing a tank top and dress pants? Luckily, this was just a dream I had last night. Not real. But it could be reality if you don't prepare. Welcome to Find Your Power podcast. I am your host, Avery Jane. Today, we are going to be talking about preparing for an interview, basically, job interview 101. This is everything you're going to need to know before you have that job interview. So, let's hop right into this episode. As someone who actually worked as a hiring manager for a remote sales company, very briefly, but I did host interviews virtually. So I do have some experience in that when it comes to holding interviews, what to expect, what I was looking for, what I was told to be looking for, everything ins and outs. As someone who has been a hiring manager, I did see a lot of job interviews, the good, the bad, the ugly, and it kind of helped me realize what you want to look for as well for myself in the future for job interviews, kind of what I need to avoid, as well as what traits, some key points that other people made while I was interviewing them that I realized I could take into account in future interviews for myself. So, whether the interview that you are going to be doing is in person or virtual, via Zoom or Microsoft Teams, there are very many of those nowadays. Doesn't matter what it is, you need to prepare just the same. So, whether that's dressing up just from the top up, sometimes that's all you really need to do on the virtual, but you should still do it. And preparing in different ways. So maybe for an in-person interview, you might be driving, testing out what how the traffic is going to be, especially depending on the time of day that you're going to be having your interview. Well, for a virtual meeting, you might want to test your camera and your microphone beforehand. So, of course, there are things that you will want to do to prepare depending on the type of interview, but nonetheless, you should be preparing either way. So we can go ahead and just dive right in. Number one, you're going to want to research the company, okay? You're going to want to look up things like the company's mission and values, what services they provide, and any recent achievements that the company has had. This will be really good to mention as well, like if you want to congratulate the hiring manager or the interviewer during the interview or even maybe right when you get there. If they've had some really great achievements as a company as a whole recently, or maybe you find some that specifically talk about the hiring manager that you are with, or one of them. Sometimes there are multiple interviewers. If the interview asks you why you want the job, which will come up later with questions, that's going to be a great time to tie in some of these specific points about the company that you are researching. It's really just important to know about the company that you're getting into. I saw a lot of people that I interviewed with this remote sales job that I was working with, a lot of people didn't know about the company going in, and they would ask me questions, which is great. You should, like I mentioned later on, you definitely should ask questions. But if your first and last questions are still, what is this company? What what do you guys sell? All of that, you probably should have done a little bit more research prior to the interview. Just don't embarrass yourself. Number two, understand the job description. So, especially with this specific position that you're applying to, maybe there are a few different positions that you will be open to having, but of course, with a goal in mind. The one that you're getting interviewed for is the one that you're going to need to completely understand the ins and outs of. So, what exactly are they going to want you to do for this position? Know that going in. I did get a lot of those questions during interviews as well, kind of what am I going to be doing? And that's okay when it comes to specifics, but of course, you're going to want to know a broad idea of the position. And when you are researching the job description and the position itself, you can kind of match your skills and experience with what they need. Also, if you see my kitty, she's just here to join us. Do you want to be in the podcast? So, when you're matching your skills and experience with what they need, you can kind of do this by framing your experiences in a different lens. You don't always have to say it like exactly like it is. What I mean by this is not lying. You're not going to lie about your experience. You're going to be honest because mistakes definitely can happen from that. But what you want to do is more make your experience sound more catered to what they're looking for. So, an example of this might be if you have been a server, bartender, host in the past, and maybe the place that you're interviewing for is very different from that kind of level job, but maybe you still have to have kind of customer service experience or maybe just the skills of interacting with customers. So, if you need experience like that, you can kind of frame your experience as I've had 2+ years in client facing roles. But if you frame it in that way rather than just, I was a bartender for about 2 years, you can see how that sounds very different. So I've had around 2 years in client facing roles. Much better. Another thing is that it might actually be helpful for you to list some of your strengths out, like maybe on a piece of paper, maybe in your notes app on your phone, anything you need to do, but kind of think about some of your strengths before you go into the interview. Because, that is something that they usually ask you, and that's going to be the next part of the episode. But that is something helpful. You might want to kind of touch on what your skills are so then you can kind of also find a way to reframe them to a way that sounds in a better lens of what the company is looking for. Number 3, you want to prepare your answers for the simple questions. So, actually, I did a little bit of research for you guys. To help you out, I found the top 10 questions that they ask in job interviews according to Indeed, as well as some kind of tips on responses for them. But it might be helpful to write these down prior to the interview, or if not, write them down, but maybe write down your answers, maybe write down just the questions if you need to think about them a bit longer, whatever you need to do. So, number 1 is tell me about yourself. With this kind of question, it's so broad that you need to be careful what you start talking about. You really don't want to start talking about personal stories. They aren't really asking about your personal life in this so much. They want to know your experiences related to the job that they're hiring for in this question. So basically, you're just going to want to highlight your key experiences related to the job here. You also might want to avoid telling them your age or, like I said, personal details about yourself, going too deep into your personal life. Keep it brief, but definitely, I'd say you want to elaborate on more than one experience that you've had, if you can. Number 2, why are you interested in our company? This is the question where you can kind of pull that information that you did the research on before. Basically, when you research all about the company, this is where you're going to pull that back in. Touch on what you learned about the company during your research and touch that into why you're interested in it. I mean, you must be since you're there. Number 3, why are you interested in the position? So the position is very different than the company, so you might want to keep those separate when it comes to thinking about your answers for these. You're going to want to have a different answer for both. So the company relates to more of the research that you did before, maybe what accomplishments the company has had. When it comes to the position, the goal is to communicate to the interviewer that you are very interested in that specific job opening as opposed to other ones because they want to know why you're sitting in front of them and not sitting in front of another interviewer. But especially if the company is looking for long term employees to hire, you definitely want to highlight why you're there rather than sitting at a different interview. What are your strengths? Is number 4. So with this one, you're going to kind of match 2 to 3 of the skills that they are looking for in the job description, which you probably should have seen online, whether that's on Indeed or LinkedIn or wherever you saw that job. You're going to kind of want to draw back 2 to 3 of those skills and touch on how they relate to you. And even better, if you've already touched on those skills already in the interview when it comes to your experience that you've had, that's even better. You can kind of loop that back around, saying maybe, yes, I've had this experience, 2 years in client facing roles, so I would say I'm very outgoing and very communicative. Maybe that's something that's on their job description that they're looking for. Number 5 for the top questions is, what are your weaknesses? So this one's like tricky sometimes. They're probably asking you this really to gauge your self awareness in most situations. But it's best to share a trait that won't affect your ability to do the core responsibilities of the job, even if that is your number one weakness. You do want to kind of shy away from doing that because that is basically telling them why they shouldn't hire you. So don't do that, but definitely be honest. It's also a good idea to maybe, after you mention your weakness, touch on how you're working on it or how you're working on managing and fixing maybe that weakness, depending on what it is. But that can also show that you're like self-aware and can work on your weaknesses. Number 6, why did you leave your last job? Here, it's best to just be honest, concise, and positive. You don't really want to dive too deep in it. Um, you want to try to shy away from speaking too negatively. If you can, don't try to, you know, talk down on your manager, your past manager, or your past coworkers. It's just not going to look good or professional. So if you can, just keep it very concise, keep it very positive. You don't have to go too into detail with this one. Number 7, how do you prioritize your work? With this one, the interviewer really wants to evaluate your organization skills and your work ethic. So, just briefly describe the techniques that you can use, and the tools that you already use to stay on track with work, and just kind of able to evaluate your work ethic with this. You can also give examples on when you successfully met deadlines. That would be very helpful in them kind of realizing that you're not just bluffing and that you have been successful with this in the past. Number 8, describe how you deal with conflict in the workplace. This one, again, very good to share a personal experience that you've had, maybe with your past workplace or past few workplaces, when you successfully handled conflict in the workplace setting. Um, Again, don't want to speak negatively on past managers, don't want to speak negatively on past coworkers. It just doesn't shine a good light. So try not to do that. Number 9, what's your preferred work environment slash leadership style? So with this one, there's no wrong answer. Really, just be honest. Do try to think about this answer beforehand. Everyone's going to have a different answer for this. Just remember to be honest and concise because at the end of the day, if your preferred work environment or leadership style does not actually meet what they're looking for, that's going to affect you too. So you really do want to know, and they do want to know as well. 100% honest with this one. And number 10, why should we hire you over other qualified candidates? This one, you definitely want to consider your unique experiences that you have, your qualities that you have that make you stand out. Um, really just be yourself with this answer, especially to kind of highlight how you're unique, not just so by the book, unless, of course, that's what they're looking for. But a lot of times people want to hire different employees with different personalities. They're not all looking for someone straight to the book, just going to give them the answers that they want all the time. So definitely feel free to lean into your personality with this question. And to mention, to kind of piggyback on that question, actually, when I was holding interviews, I found the best interviews were the ones that I enjoyed as well because the person that I was interviewing was themselves and they were acting like themselves, being themselves, as well as being professional, of course. But is if you are being yourself and kind of making the interviewer or hiring manager have a good time with the interview, that's your best situation. So, of course, you want to gauge the feel depending on how professional this environment is. But if it's a little more lenient, feel free to maybe feel a little more relaxed. Especially that can show confidence as well if you have a little bit of humor in one or two of your responses. If that seems like the vibe, of course you want to fill that out first. So, number 4, you're going to want to prepare questions to ask the interviewer or hiring manager. Okay, whether you come up with these beforehand or you come up with them along the way, that's okay too. Most of the time in interviews, I just plan on coming up with them along the way. Just because I do always think of something while they're talking, but you definitely want to have some questions. It really shows your interest and your confidence. And the hiring managers like when you ask questions. When I was hiring manager and I was holding interviews, if I was interviewing someone and I went through the whole spiel about the company, I asked my questions to them and I got their answers, and then I say, "Do you have any questions?" And they ask me nothing, and they say no, a lot of times I almost took that as a sign that they were not completely focused on the interview. Maybe they were distracted or not completely listening. Because I'm not going to cover every single thing about the job in the interview. And a lot of times you can't find all the information online that you want to know about the company either. So there's got to be at least one or two questions out there that a possible new employee is going to have. So definitely trying to figure out what those are. Number 5, you're going to want to plan your appearance. Just like my dream last night, or nightmare as you want to call it, that I mentioned at the very beginning of the episode, you want to be prepared when it comes to your appearance, what you're wearing. So if this interview is in person, make sure you plan the time that you will leave. You want to give plenty of time to get there and prepare, maybe shower beforehand, do your hair. If you wear makeup, do your makeup. If you need to get a new suit or new dress, pants, or whatever, you want to do that a day or two beforehand, okay? Don't do that the day of, the morning of. So definitely plan your outfit, plan your time to get there, your traffic Incorporate traffic into your time. I had a high school teacher that once told me and the class that I engraved into my brain that when it comes to job interviews, you should drive that route the day or two before, around the same time that you're going to have your interview. So drive to the place, if this is in person, of course, that you will have your interview. Say your interview is at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday. On that Monday or Tuesday, you want to drive to that place at around 3 p.m. just to test out that traffic, especially if you've never been there. If you've been there, maybe this one doesn't quite so apply to you. But if you've never been there, definitely do that just so you can really know the traffic around that time and the route and what it looks like. And also on the day of the interview, leave like 30 minutes. Like, I know that seems excessive, but you want to leave 30 minutes earlier than you would need to, at the very least. If you get there 30 minutes early, that's okay. You can sit in your car or whatever you need to do to just stall some time. Sit outside, maybe take a little walk if it's not too hot outside. Like, whatever you need to do, because the worst situation is if you're rushing to get to an interview, you're stressed, your adrenaline is high already because you're about to have this interview. It's just not a good combination. So don't run into that situation. Get there very early. You also want to dress slightly more professional than the company's dress code. Depending on the company, you can also just try to gauge how you want to dress. I'd say there are so many YouTube videos out there on job interview etiquette and dress code, so you can look into that. If it's virtual, make sure that you have a quiet space for that time of your interview. Make sure you have good lighting, make sure your camera and your microphone work. You don't want to run into a situation where you're trying to log on to the Zoom and you realize that your camera's not working or your microphone's not working. That has happened to me. When I was a hiring manager, I ran into that quite a few times since I did hold virtual interviews. And of course, the interviewer is not going to 100% put the blame on you for that, but it is definitely something to watch out for because it does kind of show that you didn't prepare as much. So just make sure, even if you're going to wear headphones or something, that those are working right. I've had experiences when I log on for the interview and the person that I'm interviewing, their headphones are on crooked, and maybe I can't hear them and they're frazzled to fix that, and we're already like 5 minutes behind at that point. So just make sure everything's together when it comes to that. Lastly, after the interview is a very important thing to touch on. So you may want to send an email, like a thank you email, within 24 hours of the interview, especially if this is like number one, number two job choice that you really, really want. This gives you kind of a leg up on the candidates that they interview that don't do this, because sometimes you have companies that are interviewing many candidates, more than you would imagine. In this follow up email, just kind of touch on how the interview went a little bit, restate your interest in the company, and you want to keep it short and professional. Sometimes it also might be helpful to kind of loop back on something that was mentioned in the interview just between you, just to kind of trigger that memory of, oh, this is the person that I talked about this with during the interview, or something similar to that if they are interviewing multiple candidates. So, to wrap it all up, prepare for the interview, know what you're going into, know the company, know the position, do your research, all of that in between, and you will do great. Just be confident, and sometimes you really do kind of need to fake it till you make it. I know that doesn't sound great, but it's to an extent, right? Don't completely fake something. If you're going into a job with absolutely no experience and blindsided, don't do that. But if it's a job that you've never had before and you're confident that you can learn it very quickly, sometimes fake it till you make it is the answer. But if you're on the path to finding your power, and a lot of times it's a never ending path, join me in doing the same. Tune in every Thursday to listen or watch video on YouTube or Spotify. Be sure to check out the Instagram at findyourpower_podcast. That's where I'll be posting updates on the episodes. Thank you so much for listening. Also, feel free to DM me through the Instagram as well. Any questions, comments, I will probably respond. Um, and thank you so much for tuning in and listening again. If you enjoyed, please rate the podcast. Feel free to leave any comments or reviews that you like. I'm okay with constructive criticism. And lastly, if you would like to be featured in an interview, you can send me an email. I linked it below in the description section, so feel free to do that. I will talk to you guys again soon, and remember, we will find your power.